Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's my great pleasure to be chairing this strategic preview of next week's UN General Assembly, the first physical one since before the pandemic began, because of course it was virtual last year. Hugely important UNGA next week in New York. Now, none of us need reminding that this pandemic has taken everybody by surprise when it really shouldn't have taken us by surprise. The world has been awash in the last 10, 20 years with warnings about the risks of zoonotic transfer of disease to the human population. And from the Gates Foundation to the United Nations, there's been so many warnings about looming pandemics. And yet we were caught underprepared. It's worth emphasizing that in the pre-pandemic preparedness rankings that a lot of organizations did, the United States came first in preparedness and Britain came second. So even the countries that were supposed to be best prepared were woefully unprepared in practice. As Mike Tyson famously said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I dread to think what the preparedness reports for global warming might tell us. Now, one of the key sort of lessons, silver linings, if you like, of this pandemic, particularly in the context of climate change, is that it has taught us just what a common threat is, a cross-border common threat to humanity is, and the need for cross-border international cooperation. And I think that if you look at that as a sort of, not silver lining, because this has been and remains a ghastly pandemic, 4.5 million dead, probably double that in practice. But if it teaches us habits of cooperation for future pandemics and for climate change and other common threats, then at least that's something we can take away with this. But unfortunately, in practice, what it has done is crystallized the great rift between the US and China, which has, for most of this pandemic, effectively disabled the WHO. And so that is another sort of key element of what we're going to be discussing in these three panels today. It's also worth emphasizing, just yesterday, John Kerry, Biden's climate envoy, had to make an appeal for the British hosts of the upcoming UN Summit on Climate Change, COP26, this November, to go ahead and hold this summit, because there have been calls for it to be postponed because of COVID and quarantining, etc. So let's hope that those obstacles can be overcome and that summit can indeed be held. With that in mind, let's turn to the first panel, which looks at climate change, which is chaired by my wonderful colleague in London, Leslie Hook, who's our environment and clean energy correspondent.